We are March 19th, 2019, a little after 5 o'clock, Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board. Do we have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have we all looked at the minutes?
I scanned them quickly. I did not look at them in detail.
Enough to approve them?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So Bill Blount sent a letter of resignation. I delivered it to the secretary to the select board. And Bill mentioned right in his letter that he thinks it would be a good fit for Dave Franzuta to take his seat. I'm not quite sure if it was spoken about at the last select board meeting. I delivered it on Wednesday morning, I believe. I'd like to actually poll the board. How does the board feel about expressing our interest in who fills Mr. Blount's seat at tomorrow night's select board meeting?
Mr. Chairman, is Dave Franzutto's request up at that meeting?
I do
Is it
not.
on the agenda?
No, I do not know.
Okay.
I'm just feeling as though SHAB should voice its interest, its opinion, just in case other thoughts are being made, just to let the select board know how SHAB feels. But before we do that, I'd love to know individually by the board members present tonight how each board member feels about Dave Franzutto taking Bill Blount's seat or somebody else.
Now, Dave wanted to take it like with some kind of special stipulations that he wasn't necessarily committing to the whole 3 years, and there were some other things that he said that it wouldn't be like he was interested and he wanted to help out, but he wasn't sure if he could do a full commitment as a regular board member, though.
Well, actually, the day that I delivered the letter, Dave texted me and wanted to know if the letter had been submitted. I told him yes, and he said he would go downtown and follow up. I feel his interest is there. Bill's seat is only good for one more year, so that's all he would be fulfilling at this point. And if he has some matters that keep him from a meeting, he may have mentioned. So we all have those matters occasionally. So my personal feeling, I'll start out by saying that I feel Dave would be a good fit to fill the seat. And I'm more than happy to support his role in filling the seat by expressing that interest at tomorrow night's select board meeting.
I agree. I think he'd be great, and the fact that he can only do a year, I think Bill Blount's seat is the ideal one for him to have, because, if he can commit to a year, then Bill Blount's seat is up again in a year, and we can just.
And the town can decide by voting, hopefully,
So will you just say that at public comment, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll agree also, I think it'd be a perfect fit. As he stated, he knows a lot of the things that we don't even know about what's going on down at the harbor. So I would say that the board should support him.
Thanks, Ken.
Yep.
I agree with you guys. Okay. I think we should also write a letter, so they have it in the record. I mean, it'll be in the minutes, but yeah, and yeah, I mean, what can you say? Dave has so much experience, and he used to be a regular attendee at SHAB meetings or Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board meetings, so you can't really, it's hard to deny, his experience if he wants to serve. We definitely want him.
Okay, as far as the letter goes, something you'd want to have done and hand deliver tomorrow?
I could get it done by then.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Bring it
then
by your house.
we'll be in touch. Okay.
Good evening.
Aye.
Good evening, Tom. Thanks. Welcome. Anything else on Chairman's report relating to Mr. Blount? Marine Department. Oh, Ken?
No, I was just going to say, I'm sorry to see him go.
Yes, of course, and he is proud to say that he will still have Nantucket as the port of his boat painted on the stern, and he's hoping to continue to be involved in the co-op program and be able to sell fresh fish off his boat here. So we'll see how that goes. Right now, it's out of the water. He had a mishap and a fire in the galley of the boat at the shipyard. Luckily, he's covered by insurance, and he's going to have a fresh galley and fresh pilot house, I believe, also. Mm-hmm. Marine Department report. Not seeing Sheila. We'll move on to Natural Resources report. Not seeing Jeff. We'll move forward to public comment. Probably no public comment. Moving on to old business, hazardous materials collection containment. I had the opportunity to meet with the new building inspector. His name's Paul Murphy. Very, he was all ears about the issue. Also, he was accompanied by Jeff Morash as an assistant building inspector. And Mr. Vorse did bring it to their attention that we were interested in having a separate container at job sites for holding hazardous materials. Mr. Murphy expressed more of an interest in our first idea of the DPW creating a facility and having more accessible times, that it would be open for people to drop off. Mr. Morash felt that separate containers on site may not be very effective. Painters keep their materials indoors. They recycle their paint thinner until it's spent. And they would also be a nuisance on small lots when site work is underway, such as, digging trenches and backhoe being on site and the box possibly being damaged or knocked over. He did have one good thought that I thought was a great idea. We know that the director of the DPW is lobbying for a new building in the multi-million-dollar range, and we should request that a hazardous waste collection facility be included in his plans. And so I'm not sure. I didn't get a chance to look at the warrant to see if, I know last year he was approved money to draw up the plans. I don't know if there's an article in this year's warrant for the building itself or not. I'm not quite sure. I did not get a chance to look. But I thought that was a good idea. I think, as I've repeated before, the quote from Matt Fee that we need to, if we're going to bring something before the board, it needs to be well researched, analyzed, and prepared, and trying to hammer down, as the Southeast Director of DEP said, we need to come up with what works best for our community, and the DEP is eager and willing to work with Nantucket to help us create the most efficient system to fit our needs. So I guess it's, a matter of going back and revising a proposal for advisement. And we spoke about it a little bit at the Shellfish Association meeting last night. A lot of ideas can be thrown out there. Ron Shepard had an idea that there should be a private hauler or somebody hired by the town who actually goes to job sites, shops, garages, and actually picks up the waste. When you get all these kinds of ideas thrown at you, it becomes confusing, and you realize why, it's requested that we come with advisements that are researched, analyzed, and prepared. So to me, that didn't seem quite as feasible as a convenient facility that the entire island is capable of dropping off at. However it may work as far as scheduling, I still feel at least 1 weekday per week and 1 weekend day per week that the facility be open for drop-off. Any thoughts from the board?
We definitely need to hold a workshop on this
Yes.
whenever you think, so that we can spend, however long we need to come up with our recommendation. Mm-hmm. We've certainly talked about it a lot at meetings, to the point where we all have set ideas that we want to, that we think we should follow up on, and with you to guide us. So maybe the workshop won't take that long, but we should. That's what I think.
All right. Do you know when elections are?
Yeah, elections are. The town meeting is the 1st, I think. Town meeting's the 1st of April, and then elections are the following week, so it'll be the 9th, I think.
And if town meeting goes to 2 nights, should we be holding our meeting April 2nd?
We don't have to. Maybe we could. Maybe one of us could speak with Sarah Alger, or maybe one of the selectmen, to gauge how long they think it's going to go. Was it one night last year?
That's a long shot, I think, seeing it being done in one night. But
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if it was one night last year. Good question.
We don't have to, and I could also inquire about alternate meeting space.
All right, well, before this evening is over, we'll try to hammer that down. If not, we have time over the next week and a half. Any more thoughts on hazardous materials collection?
Well, with the Massachusetts state requirements, would there have to be a special employee who would be trained to receive the material if we got the space in the building? Listen, even if we got the space, would that be another person?
That's what I understand. It's licensed by the Environmental Protection Agency, and that you have to be licensed in order to handle anything like that.
I would imagine so, yes.
Okay, so that's just part of it. That yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to look at that as pretty typical, guys who work for Department of Transportation or Public Works are sent off for classes for certain things. So I don't see where it's too much to ask, personally.
Well, it's just another town employee is the only.
I would think
Yeah.
it could be done with in-house. I would like to hope they could take a current employee, train him for this, and 2 days a week he's assigned to the shed, the collection shed. So, even if it's every other week, we need to do something. This is a fast-moving island. As we all know, we've hashed this out a lot.
Yeah. I know.
But, buildings, everything seems to be moving fast from real estate to building projects. And I talked to one contractor recently who says he never goes. He's not going to take the time to go to hazardous waste day. He feels he'd have to wait in line, and he leaves it up to an employee. And what if the employee doesn't feel like going there either? I mean, there's a lot of variables in this.
There was that exploding paint can event at a prescribed burn a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I'm going to try to draft something up by our next meeting. As Ginger said, we'll keep hammering away at this.
Well, we need to know from DEP what the training would require. So, that's one of the parts of the plan.
Any other bits of information that we should have? Because that's a good one, Ginger. To be able to explain in our request that, knowing that somebody needs to be trained for this. Anything else that, we also need... The building is heavily permitted and regulated as far as how it's built. So maybe some more information on that would help with this proposal also.
No, I think we should save it all for the workshop.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, having some of this information for the workshop will help us formulate a letter of recommendation.
Right, and bring your ideas and, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Environmentally friendly moorings. I think, the way Sheila summed it up at the last meeting about these bungee cords getting saturated with growth to the point where they're dragging on the bottom equivalent to a chain. We need some more information, more research.
And we got plenty of time since Sheila says that this is getting put on the shelf for a while. So we can make this a long-term goal. Definitely.
Okay.
When we get around to, updoing our goals and objectives.
Okay.
After the election.
Good idea.
That's what I think.
All right. Portion of state lodging tax earmarked for water protection. Along with the other two articles that are in the warrant every year, one being the water quality improvement and the other being the embarkation fee. Haven't seen yet as far as the new lodging tax, if the EPA has determined we are eligible for the 2.75% that would be earmarked strictly for water quality improvement. I think we as a board should continue to lobby for a portion of the tax, whether we're earmarked or not for water quality protection, we should simply lobby for more money to be filtered into stormwater improvements. And I know the rest of the board agrees with that. You know, how we move forward, you know, I think of, you know, speaking out loud so that more people hear. And, you know, if this is something, you know, we should speak about at town meeting during, you know, discussion, if one of these articles are called to be spoken on, I think our voice should be heard in how we feel about the way this money's being spent.
I agree.
All right, well, that's something else that, you know, requires some homework, so I'll do some studying of the warrant and see what would be quick and effective, a quick and effective comment to raise some attention and awareness. Which reminds me of backing up to hazardous materials. It was mentioned quickly at NSA the other night, and they are willing to help in some way, whether it's, you know, making stickers for dumpsters, no hazardous materials, taking a page from the Blue Book and printing up a bunch of flyers that are, you know, given out with, whether it's with permits that are issued from the building department or, you know, put out at local places to be picked up by the average passerby. So that was, you know, good support on their part. And I think if we were to request for anything to, you know, to come up with they're willing to help out. If there's no more discussion in old business, we'll move to new business. The public forum for the Nantucket Culverts Children's Beach Pump Station. Ginger, you were able to attend.
I was able to get there. And as I mentioned, I own property on Long Pond, so as a homeowner, I have an interest in these things. But I'll give you the report first, and then if I may, I'll just add in a little more information from my own perspective, if that's acceptable.
Please.
Okay. All right. So the culverts are in good shape. There's some growth and sediment, but it's not bad, maybe 2 to 5 inches. The culvert at Cambridge Street has a little bit of rust. There might be needed a little bit of repair. There's some bolts missing. The main constriction to water flow is not the culverts, it's Nantucket Ditch. So they're saying that impedes interchange with Hither Creek, and they recommend cleaning the ditch to increase the flow. They did a month of study, and they also checked salinity and rainfall. So there were several graphs showing the interchange of the tidal flow and the interchange of salt and fresh, since they took salinity. It was last October, I believe they did. I can't remember what whether it was it seemed to me last October we had a fair amount of rainfall, so that was their basis for the report. They did not look at the culverts and the ditches that go under Blue Heron Way or come out at Warren's Landing, and they there were two concerns. One is obviously the water quality in Hither Creek is very poor because of the nitrogen NPT. It's a lot of excess nitrogen in Hither Creek. Mr. Collier said that the Nantucket, that Long Pond had improved actually, and that the dump has done a lot of work to try and clean up a bit, so that that's had some improvement. The other concern is storm surge. In other words, that when we have a storm, the salt water comes in and makes the level higher, which is threatening to the roads. Some of the homeowners were wanting to have the bridges back so they could kayak under them, the way they used to do when we were all kids. Let's see. I asked if they had thought about improving the flow in Hither Creek by cleaning some of those ditches that go directly to the harbor, the one that comes out from under Blue Heron Way from Andy Dump's pond. Mm-hmm. And they said no, they didn't want too much flow because of the storm surge concern. So it seems to be slightly contradictory, but that's their recommendation was to increase the flow in the ditches to improve water quality. They were looking solely at the nitrogen and potassium, and they did not look at Nantucket Harbor at all. They just studied by the culverts and the outflow and first bridge, second bridge, and over by North Cambridge. I forget where the other thing is. I'm sure that all that information must be available somewhere. I didn't have time to write everything down. The Children's Beach pump station was. Mr. O'Neill got a lot of entertainment about how badly that went. The pumps were too small. The chambers were never cleaned once they were installed. They were totally overwhelmed by stormwater. The flapper that was supposed to keep the salt water out was never installed. So as soon as the tide got above the level of the pipe, the stormwater would come right in, and they were just pumping against the tide. There was no. The whole project was a total failure, and to keep it operating on a temporary basis, apparently it does have some function when with rainfall, but the pumps were not designed for continuous use. And so they burned out, and the first one was non-functioning when he got here, so he sent it to be rebuilt at a cost of $20,000. And while it was away, the second one failed, so that's another $20,000. So they're looking for a longer-term solution. They're operating on a temporary basis because it does deal with some of the stormwater under certain conditions, but the outfall pipe does go under in certain storm tides. So that was the gist.
Did he say what neighborhood that's serving?
I think it goes all the way. It's quite a large area of that watershed. It goes, I think, all the way from like the Lily Pond and Brant Point and down Hulbert Ave. So it's those storm drains cover a lot of ground. They're still tracking the storm drains because apparently there's still some influx of sewage in some of them from the old system where the pipes went, it was straight into the harbor. And so I don't know that we know where all the pipes are and where they're connected. It's a some of the system is very old. So they have been doing some study with the camera and what he referred to as the stormwater equivalent of the colonoscopy. And so they're still working on it.
Was that pump station down there, you said it had the chambers in it, was that meant to take out any kind of pollution before it hit the harbor?
Well, it had I'm not sure I understand all of that. I wrote down the notes quickly when I got home, and I don't remember all of the details. It collected some of the stuff, but I don't know how much. I don't know what kind of filters they had. It's just some of the loose.
Clean out. It must have caught something before it went into.
Well, they took 2 truckloads. I forget how many tons, because it had never been cleaned once it was installed, and that I'm sure didn't help.
Yeah.
Another reason a division needs to be created for our storm drain system.
The Department
I
of
feel.
Homework.
Yeah. Back to the culverts, the trenches more specifically. Did he mention that he would be pursuing permits to maintain the trenches? in
Well,
some way?
everyone except possibly me, all the homeowners were all very enthusiastic about cleaning out the ditch. So I'm speaking personally now.
Well, before you do,
okay,
Ginger, just curious if he had mentioned, was this just like an overview of how things stand at this point, or did he mention any plans of action?
I think he's probably pretty enthusiastic about cleaning out the ditch. That was the recommendation, and he was like, he said, Bobby DaCosta will say, "I told you so," that it's the ditch, not the culverts. And, I think a somewhat cursory look by anybody would have substantiated that to begin with, but they did nice, graphs and illustrations. I brought in some visual materials of my own if you want to look at them.
Okay. All right. And now if you wish to speak, on your,
Well, I guess
how you feel personally about it.
If there are
being
any
in a
other
butter.
questions, before I shift over.
No.
We're talking about the culverts between north head of Long Pond under
That's-
First Bridge, and then the culvert going under Second Bridge, and then the culvert going under North Cambridge Street.
Right, those 3 culverts were the ones that they looked at.
Okay.
Yeah, and they did various, they did testing at 4 points. They didn't test, I don't think they went actually into Hither Creek itself, but they looked at various parts of the pond.
In answer to the people that wanted the bridges restored, I've paddled my kayak through the culvert underneath North Cambridge Street.
Well, that one you probably could.
Yeah, but
The
then
others would be a bit of a stretch.
you'd have to swim. Yep.
You'd have to hold your breath, and depending on the tide, you might have a long swim. Okay, any other questions?
No.
I'm trying to remember everything, but it's a longish meeting. So I personally have some reservations about shifting a freshwater ecology to a saltwater ecology. And they did acknowledge that the ditch was first dug, I believe, in 1665, and for herring. Somebody, I can't remember who, told me that they thought that originally the Native Americans were in favor of doing the work because it was for the fish, but that the colonists actually liked the idea because of the salt hay for their cattle. So they clearly were, intending to convert that meadow, which was a meadow, into salt marsh, and which is what it is today. So I brought a terrible picture of a slide that my father took of Nantucket Ditch in 1949 that shows that the ditch is not very wide. And my own personal recollection is that even in the early 70s, that while competition for the herring was a little bit, there was fierce competition for the best spots, and so whoever got furthest closer to the Hither Creek would try to get to the fish first.
Is this taken from North Cambridge?
I don't know where he stood to take it. I think he was probably down along that edge, but I don't know. That looks like where that bend is, but it's a little more bendy now.
Yeah, because this back here is
The upland.
Fisher's Landing.
Yeah, I agree. I also brought this was just labeled Nantucket Swamp, but that's some of the freshwater vegetation, and this is actually here's a picture that Cheryl Beaton took on the property at 190 Nantucket Road, and gave the photograph to my mother. That's Rose Begonia. It's a little freshwater orchid, which has not been seen since. So the I remember a guy having, I'm not sure who it was actually, I don't remember. In the competition to get the herring, I remember seeing a truck go by with a net made of, I think it was like chicken wire, hardware cloth, something like that. It had about a 3-foot opening and maybe a 4 or 5 foot basket, and they were able to pretty effectively block the whole ditch with it. So there was a lot of the herring didn't actually run when the ditch was blocked, obviously. So that was the old days. The Phragmites, Ernie Steinauer has told me that's the Phragmites australis, the common reed. That's a terrible invasive. Is apparently a little more salt tolerant than the narrow-leaved cattail, which would be the native pond vegetation. And my other thought is that if you have I think the pond is something like 7.5 acres, and to get that to effectively drain through one area, it's just never going to be very efficient. And so I don't really have a recommendation myself. I mean, I think that it's a lot of finger pointing, as was pointed out. The people on Hither Creek say it's Nantucket Marine in the dump. The Nantucket Marine says it's the people on Hither Creek in the dump. The dump says it's them. There's no. It's just one of those multiple causes, I'm sure. And to assign any one in particular is nobody's going to accept when they can point their finger at the other one. But it just doesn't seem. It seems to me that it's kind of the same problem that they had with the Children's Beach thing. If the tide is high in the Sound, the water isn't going to want to flow out, and as long as it depends on the rainfall, what the level of the pond is, whether it's going to flow in or out. So it's never going to be a great way to clean out Long Pond, and. It might be better for the ecosystem if they applied to open Long Pond periodically. They could probably just open the pond at the south end, the way we do with other ponds, and close the ditch. Then you'd have a freshwater system, and then you'd have a much smaller area with tidal circulation, which would be Hither Creek. Now, that would mean probably closing those ditches that are overgrown, that they're not looking at through Blue Heron and the other place. If they really wanted to really increase the flow, they should clean them out and go directly into Nantucket Harbor instead of having to go around through Hither Creek. So I don't know. I really don't know. I have mostly questions and, silly ideas. Like, you laughed at me very hard the last time I talked about it, just making a...
Me?
Yeah. making a Nantucket into an island and cutting through Linda Loring's cranberry bog and coming out the other end. I mean, that would definitely make increased flow. I don't know that would be a good idea.
I don't recall that at all.
But the Department of Crazy Ideas are certainly around. So I just don't know. I don't think it would. It certainly wouldn't benefit my property to be converted to salt marsh. The Phragmites is taken in. I have about 7 acres of freshwater swamp, which gets damaged in tidal surge. In addition to the orchids, there are spotted turtles. I don't know if they're still alive, but there used to be spotted turtles in there. They're no longer on the endangered list because, as they've done enough research, they've found that there are more of them than they thought. But I can't see adding salt to Long Pond as a long-term benefit. And if you're only looking at nitrogen and water is water and you don't care what else is in it, then it's a good idea, but I think there's more to look at. That's all.
Very interesting. There's a lot of complications and several different ways to look at it. The information that Peter gave us from the early to mid-2000s was very interesting. I mean, to think that fish would come into the trenches and feed on mosquito eggs. A great idea, but as you say, adding salt water to a freshwater body, you're tampering with the natural flora and fauna and wildlife. So I didn't realize. I did know that the trench that goes all the way down past Hafenreffer straight to the harbor, mm-hmm. Is that from the same trench that goes under the culvert to Hither Creek also?
I don't think it's connected to the same ditch, but at high tides it does go out. There's that pond there. And I think the ponds are actually connected over by the through the swamp.
I don't know enough about the system to make an opinion other than what others say. And
let's see.
There's conflicting opinions for sure.
Okay, so let me think why I think that. There's as you go down North Cambridge Street to the beach, you go over the big culvert, you go around a bend. As you go down onto the point before you get down to the end of North Cambridge, you go over a culvert that connects Andy Dump's Pond to Hither Creek on the north side of Nantucket Marine, and then that goes out through the culvert that is by Hafenreffers. No, not by Hafenreffers. I forget the people's name. It's between Hafenreffer and that other house. So the westward was the house that was removed and is now land bank property, and then there's another house, and then there's Hafenreffer. So it's between that other house and
that
Hafenreffer.
General area.
Yeah. So that's how that pond connects Hither Creek to Nantucket Harbor, and that's still pretty tidal. And then the other pond on the north side of Hafenreffers is connected through Lawrence Landing. There's 2 salt marshes. There's the salt marsh, and there's that pond north of Hafenreffers, and then there's a little salt marsh on the north side of the road there that goes down to the cottage at Lawrence Landing.
Do you ever run into Sheila? Lucy?
Hardly ever.
All right, I wonder if we could get her to, when she's up in the Coast Guard helicopter, to take some aerial photos.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that
It would be
entire
nice to know.
area.
I believe that whole area has aerials from the 1930s. We looked at them at one point at the Conservation Commission when we had an application from Nantucket Marine when they installed their system where they wash the boats. They have drains are in there underneath their building or in the parking area there where they're supposed to collect all the soap and everything.
The study didn't extend into the creek, at least up to Nantucket Marine?
That I can't remember. They may have done. I'd have to. I didn't get a copy of the map. It was just a PowerPoint slide. It came by pretty quickly. That may have been the fourth spot. I can't recall.
Any other questions from the board for Ginger?
I just wish I'd been at that meeting.
Well, I wish you had too.
That sounds fascinating.
Well, it is, and it's really, I think that they took a very narrow focus of their study, and they got the conclusion they wanted, but that we should be looking at the bigger picture.
I think, I just did the minutes yesterday and listening to us talk with Sheila about Hither Creek and how it is starting to shoal up a bit. That I'm just wondering if dredging Hither Creek and around Little Neck and out, if they want flow, then maybe that helps more than digging the ditch out.
Well, I also happen to know that there's a study in the offing because at one point when Nantucket Marine had an application, they found many juvenile quahogs off the end of the pier there. And a recent search, they've been unable to find any. So there's a concern that the scallop larvae and the clams get carried into Hither Creek and then are trying to nest on the algae, and then they die because of the hypoxia and the pollution that's in Hither Creek. But I think that the Land Council seemed to be saying that Hither Creek was more polluted than the pond itself, which, considering that when Sarah Oaktie was sampling, she had a cut on her arm and ended up in Mass General for 3 days, I find kind of scary.
Yeah.
Anything else on this topic?
I think I've said enough.
Yes.
What did they say the follow-up was going to be? I mean, in terms of making a decision, it was a public information session, but then they took public comment, sounds like.
Well, the homeowners in Hither Creek are delighted with the idea of more drainage, and let's see. One of them was saying that they had west basements for the first time there. I guess the first house after Second Bridge, and that was they thought was groundwater. That was from last year when we had not this past winter, but the winter before when, the road went at Sakatcha and that Sakatcha did not come up. It's another concern of mine because of the four-toed salamanders, but I guess they're in Little Sakatcha in the swamp over on the southeast corner. But the fact that the barrier beach breached in the storm, I think, has less to do with cleaning out culverts to get into the freshwater system on the south side of Pulpus Road and more with something that's going on to the east where the nourishment is inadequate to equal the contribution of the bluff. So.
Okay. Thank you, Ginger. at this point, I mean, we could go on and on with it, but it's all like, just throwing thoughts and ideas up in the air. We'll just have to keep our ears open of what's going on out there, and a lot of people are
Mr. O'Neill did say there'd be permitting, so that it'll have to come before the Conservation Commission, and I don't know when. I don't think a date was given for that.
And if there's a cleaning out of the ditches, I think it'll be, it'll have to make a pass through the Army Corps of Engineers, as it did, because when the town, the DPW, back in the early 2000s, came up with that plan to clean out the mosquito ditches, there was a whole big thing they had to do with the Army Corps of Engineers. They had to go through, so I think it's more than just a state permit and a Concom permit.
Well, that's very possible. There was another gentleman who said that after all that water came into the pond when the level was extremely high, I think he said it took 4 days for the water to flow out of the North Cambridge Street culvert. But I think it was probably pretty high in Nantucket Harbor also. And I'll see if I can get someone to give. Richard Limeburner did a tide gauge study of showing the discrepancy between the Sound and the ocean through the cut between Tuckernuck and Smiths Point. So that really does explain some of the wobbles of the interchange because the tide gets higher on the Sound side and takes longer to get out past the ever-expanding point. And it's like that. We all know what happens in the harbor when the wind blows northeast for 3 days. It gets higher and higher with each tide because the tide can't flow out as well. Maybe it's better now that the jetty's done. But
with the westerlies we've been having right now, the northwesterlies, the tide's not going out.
Yeah.
And I noticed today that the Cascada ditches and marsh is completely full.
Wow.
And when you get out over to the other side in the eastern shore, the tide looked low.
Oh yeah.
And so the wind certainly holds water in both of our harbors.
Well, I don't mind admitting that when the water from the North Head was blowing over the road, and I went out to check on the house in Nantucket, the next time I went, I parked the truck at 40th Pole and walked through the trail to Fisher's Landing because I didn't want to get stuck.
Huh.
Oh.
I would have, at that point, if it had been me, I think I would have thought that the road would have been closed, but it didn't actually get undermined.
When was that?
The winter before this past one, when we had the 4 nor'easters.
Right.
That was about nor'easter number 2, I think. I can't remember which was which.
The winter before this one? So last year?
Yeah.
Right.
That's when we had the big hole in Sacagawea.
Right.
In the road there.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I miss all the fun.
Public questions or comment? While we're on kind of a subject mentioning dredging, just today there was a radio announcement that Wellfleet got their permitting for dredging, and their main reason was for shellfish habitat improvement, naming siltation being an issue. And Dave Franzuto's actually at a meeting tonight about dredging on the Cape someplace. So something I think, we'll be talking about more in the future, especially if Dave comes on board. And unfortunately, I think dredging in a lot of minds is considered a 4-letter word, but in talking about the trenches and the ditches and the culverts, And with what Mr. Brace had to say, it only seems to make sense if some dredging or ditch cleaning were to take place, that you'd think they would start with Hither Creek, where it all kind of begins and flows in and out from, and see how that has an effect on the flow before they get into the ditches themselves. But like I said, this is, a complicated issue with a lot of varying opinions. So,
Well, I'll just add one more opinion, which was that in the old days before water quality was the fad of du jour, that cleaning out the ditch was every time the ditch is cleaned out, it's actually expanded, I would say, and that the original reason was that if the ditch was bigger, there would be more fish. I don't think it quite worked out that way, but
sounds like something they say in New York.
well, anyway.
I remember the handout they gave about the ditches being built and all that, and they were saying that they restricted the culvert that goes across Nantucket Road. Wasn't made to be big to allow a lot of flow going into the pond, and it was made to stop the water and let it spread out into that marsh that's there where all the side ditches are. And that's the point that you were making, that the people were happy to have the culverts put in for drainage from the pond. That's also going to let more water in from the ocean tides.
Well, yeah, that was the concern which Mr. O'Neill said about the storm surge, because they don't want too much flow, or they're just going to have more flooding. And I talked quite a bit about climate change, actually, and showed maps of the projection of when those low areas are going to be underwater. So.
I think they gave thought to that back when they first built it. That's what I think. Did you give that handout for the ditches, or?
I haven't seen it, no.
Yeah. I ran across it somewhere, but I think that's how they were designed originally. Okay, I'm all set.
Good. Thanks, Ken. Any items for the next meeting on board members' minds?
Well, if we can have that workshop, if you're thinking that, we can try and do that either for the,
If we have an April 2nd meeting, why don't we
okay,
make that a workshop? And we just have to try to, get some projections on town meeting. It's one of those things where I think, every other board and commission is attending town meeting versus having their own meeting if they're scheduled at that time.
right.
I wouldn't want to keep any board member from not attending town meeting, which is now twice a year, but it's our annual town meeting, and versus feeling obligated to attend here instead. So, and the election you said is
April 1st. No, sorry, April 9th.
April 9th. Okay.
Town meeting. begins.
So April 16th would be our next meeting. If we do not meet April 2nd, this is very possible it's Mr. Kuntz's last meeting. Ken, I just would like to say that I've thoroughly enjoyed your service on the board, and I'm going to miss you, and I think the rest of the board's going to miss you also.
I appreciate that.
But I hope you're able to catch up on your endeavors and enjoy life.
Thank you.
We hope to hear from you especially if you come up with any fresh information on the green crab.
I think you might see me on the other side of the microphones a number of
Good.
times after this.
All right, good, because I know your eyes are on the waterfront, and we'd want to hear from you, for sure. Joe LaPuma did text me earlier and mentioned that he does intend to have a write-in campaign, so please, I would love to see Joe stay with us. I think, it's safe to say that. The rest of the board feels that way. So a big reminder to everybody as far as write-in campaign goes, bring a pen with you to the ballot box
I think he
because
just needs one vote actually to get in.
yeah. All right. Well, good. But bring a pen anyway, because you can't write a name in the small space provided with the felt tip pen made to fill in the oval. So I found that very difficult to try to pen a name in.
And do we know, Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Pronk is going to follow through?
I haven't heard from Mr. Pronk since our last meeting, but he seemed encouraged.
Okay.
That'd be good.
I mean, we did reach out to fishermen, and we all know that Mr. Pronk can become maybe over-verbal, but if his participation on the board could also be very useful to us. So it'll simply be up to the chairman to keep his board members in line.
Good luck.
I've yet to see Tim Mooney again. If I can't get Tim Mooney to pursue, I am going to reach out to Tim Mooney more, at least to come in, and maybe we can have some questions for him as far as what he sees on the bottom when he's diving, and he does a lot of diving in the harbors, both ends of the island. So I'm encouraged and looking forward to after the election and looking forward to having a full board and becoming a louder voice for the sake of our environment. And so I feel nothing but positive for the future here at SHAB. I hope the rest of you feel the same.
Definitely. Definitely.
Anything else? If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?